22:00 a.m. September 12, 2025. A swarm of 221 Ukrainian drones is heading straight for Russia's Primorsk port, triggering an explosion that shook the world. This is Ukraine's boldest attack to date, a direct blow to the heart of Russia's largest Baltic oil hub, worth $15 billion annually. The arsenal for the job was a custom-built cocktail of lethality, the long-range Lyutyi drone with a reach of nearly 1,000 miles and a 220-pound warhead, the heavier Palianytsia packing a 440-pound punch, and the agile Beaver. Each unit costing less than $100,000 is a marvel of battlefield economics, equipped with jam-proof GPS and inertial navigation systems that make them nearly impossible to electronically disrupt. Inside an SBU control room in Kyiv, the only light comes from dozens of flickering monitors. Through the thermal camera feed of a lead drone, the prize is painted in stark white and black Primorsk port, the Kremlin's financial lifeblood. A staggering 1 million barrels of crude oil a day. 42 million gallons, enough to fuel every car in Texas for a month, plus another 300,000 barrels of diesel. Ukrainian intelligence spent months mapping the target, identifying not just the physical infrastructure, but its financial and systemic vulnerabilities. The mission objective was surgically precise to sever the port's operational arteries, the pumping stations and tanker loading terminals, creating maximum economic pain with minimum collateral damage. At 22:00 a.m., more than 4 hours before the strike and over 560 miles away, the operation began. A heavily modified commercial vessel sailing under a false flag in the Black Sea. The swarm of 221 drones roared to life, embarking on a gauntlet that outsmarted Russia's Baltic defenses, a route that Ukrainian intelligence had spent 6 months preparing for. The first obstacle was immediate: the dense network of Russian patrols in the Black Sea. Instead of a direct northern route, the swarm executed a pre-programmed flanking maneuver, hugging the coastlines of NATO-aligned nations. This entire corridor was the product of painstaking intelligence work, mapping Russian patrol schedules, analyzing gaps in coastal radar coverage, and even modeling sea state conditions to predict the quietest windows for transit. At 00:15 hours, as the swarm approached a critical choke point, the first layer of Ukrainian ingenuity was revealed. To counter Russian surface patrols, the drones initiated a porpoising maneuver. Each drone dipped 3 to 6 feet below the waves for 30 seconds, skimming silently to dodge radar. They would then surface with a snorkel mast for just 15 seconds to get a GPS fix and communicate with the swarm before diving again. The timing wasn't random. It was controlled by an AI algorithm that synchronized the surfacing period with the peak of the Baltic's wave troughs, minimizing their radar and thermal signature to nearly zero. At 01:30 hours, the swarm deployed its second trick. As they neared the heavily monitored waters leading to the Gulf of Finland, a dozen drones from the Beaver contingent broke from the main formation. As the most numerous and cost-effective units in the swarm, their primary role in this phase wasn't to deliver a warhead, but to serve as expendable bait. They fired decoy flares that tricked Russian radar into chasing ghost ships, drawing the attention of a Russian patrol boat that dutifully changed course to investigate. While the Russians were busy chasing ghosts, the main attack force, the heavy-hitting Lyutyi and Palianytsia drones, slipped past undetected. At 01:45 hours, the swarm hit the port's first line of defense, 2 Raptor-class patrol boats. On their radar screens, the Ukrainian drones were simply invisible. The boat's systems, designed to track large ships, dismissed the low-flying swarm as nothing more than sea clutter waves on a choppy night. Armed with heavy machine guns, the Russian sailors were effectively deaf and blind as 209 silent killers slipped right past their patrol route. Past the boats lay the real fortress, a $500 million layered kill zone. First, the Buck M3, the long-range sniper designed to kill jets from over 40 miles away. Its powerful radar was pointed at the sky, completely oblivious to the threat practically tasting the salt water below. Closer in waited the Panzer S-1, the system's bulldog. It's a self-contained death machine that shoots missiles at nearly 700 miles per hour in a hailstorm of 5,000 bullets per minute. Backing it up was the Tor M2, the swarm-killing specialist designed to take on dozens of targets at once. And enveloping it all was the Krasuka 4, an electronic sledgehammer designed to fry the brains of any incoming weapon. Add a web of thermal and optical cameras, and on paper, Primorsk should have been a death trap. But here's the multi-billion-dollar punchline. All of it was looking for the wrong enemy. The sophisticated computers running this fortress were programmed to ignore sea clutter, the radar noise from waves, to prevent false alarms. The Ukrainian drones flying at just 3 feet looked exactly like waves. It's like having a world-class security system designed to stop burglars from picking the lock while the attacker simply crawls through the doggy door. Inside the command post, the operators saw nothing. Their impenetrable shield had a fatal flaw, and 209 drones were about to exploit it. At 01:52 hours, a Russian Panzer operator's console lights up like a Christmas tree. Fleeting blips appear, hold for 2 seconds, and vanish before his targeting computer can achieve a lock. It's like trying to swat a dozen flies in a dark room. He has no idea this chaos is perfectly orchestrated. This is the ghost swarm tactic, and it's where the brain of the Ukrainian operation begins to dismantle the brawn of the Russian defense. Over 150 of the Beaver drones were programmed as sacrificial decoys. Their job was to pop up just high enough to ping the Russian radar, then dive back into the sea clutter, forcing the Panzer and Tor systems into a frantic, unwinnable game of electronic whack-a-mole. While Russian operators were screaming for target locks on ghosts, the real killers, the heavy-hitting Lyutyi and Palianytsia drones, were silently closing the distance. At 01:55 hours, the Russians hit the big red button they thought was their trump card. The Krasuka 4 surges to life, pumping enough raw electronic power into the air to black out every cell phone from here to Finland. To the Russian operators, they've just blinded the entire swarm. To the Ukrainians, the Russians just fell for the final trap. You see, in those final 3 minutes, the Ukrainian drones don't need a radio signal. They go completely dark, switching to a fully autonomous terminal guidance mode. Inside each drone is an AI running on a chip that costs about $5,000. This AI has one job: pattern recognition. A Russian commander, finally getting a clean thermal track on an incoming Lyutyi, screams at his gunner to fire. As the missile launches, he watches in disbelief as the drone, now deep inside the Krasuka's jamming bubble, executes a perfect pre-calculated S-turn to dodge the incoming fire. His panicked voice on the command channel tells the whole story. It's dodging. How is it dodging? All comms are jammed. At 01:58 a.m., the sky over Primorsk erupts. The Russian operators, adapting with brutal speed, finally find their rhythm. They realize the radar is unreliable and switch their primary focus to their thermal imagers, hunting for the hot engine signatures of the drones against the cold night. A Panzer operator gets the first clean lock. A streak of light and a 57 E6 missile traveling at nearly 2,700 miles per hour connects. One Beaver drone disintegrates into a cloud of plywood and electronics. The first kill is a spark in a tinderbox. The Tor M2 systems, now fed clear thermal data, join the fight. Their vertically launched missiles arc into the sky, each one locking onto a separate target. The kill count starts to climb, and it climbs fast. 10, 15, 25 drones are turned into scrap metal and scattered across the Baltic. On the Ukrainian screens in Kiev, the situation becomes critical. Their protective decoy screen is being systematically dismantled. The Russian gunners are good, and they are learning. The Russian battery commander makes a smart, logical call that should have won him the battle. He yells into his headset, "Ignore the smaller signatures. Prioritize the large thermal blooms. Those have to be the heavy ones carrying the main payload." His operators comply, slewing their turrets to find the bigger, hotter targets, which they correctly assume are the Lyutyi and Palianytsia drones. But he's just made a fatal mistake. He assumed the Beaver decoys were just simple bait. He was wrong. At 02:01 hours, as a Panzer missile closes in on Beaver drone number 28, the Ukrainian operator doesn't try to evade. Instead, he sends a single command: ignite. The Beaver doesn't just explode when the missile hits it. Its secondary payload, a thermobaric charge, detonates, creating not a quick flash, but a blazing fireball that lights up the night, blinding Russian sensors. This was Ukraine's ace in the hole. The Russians thought they were shooting down drones. What they were actually doing was triggering a series of blinding flashes across their own defensive line. Suddenly, the Russian screens are just a wall of impenetrable white. And through that wall, unseen and untrackable, the Lyutyi and Palianytsia drones make their final, unimpeded sprint to their targets. And 30 seconds was all the real killers needed. At 02:02 hours, the world goes white. For the Russian operators, their thermal screens are now useless, a Jackson Pollock painting of thermal static from the thermobaric fireballs. The chaos is absolute. The battery commander is screaming orders that no one can execute. "Fire on anything that moves!" A voice cracks over the comms. The reply is pure panic. "I can't see, the scopes are blind." But in the Kyiv control room, the operator's screens are crystal clear. Through the nose cone camera of a Lyutyi drone, the target grows larger with terrifying speed. The Aframax Kusto, a 700,000-barrel tanker worth $50 million, sits tethered to the loading dock like a prize pig. Beside it, the Kayun. The AI is in its terminal phase, making micro-corrections, its flight path now locked and unjammable. The clock is ticking, 20 seconds to impact. The Russian response becomes primal. Deprived of their sophisticated sensors, they revert to sheer volume of fire. The last two operational Panzer systems begin firing blind, their 30mm cannons spewing a wall of steel into the darkness, hoping to hit something, anything. It's the tactical equivalent of firing a shotgun blindfolded into a hurricane. 10 seconds. The drone's camera feed is now so close you can read the rust stains on the Kusto's hull. The Raptor patrol boats their crews, finally realizing the attack is coming from the sea, open up with their 14.5mm heavy machine guns. Bullets stitch across the water around the drone, but its final approach is too fast, too low. The stakes are absolute. A single failure now and $41 million in daily oil revenue survives to fund another day of war. But there is no failure. The drone doesn't even flinch. At 02:03 a.m., the blinding glare from the thermobaric decoys finally fades. For a split second, the Russian operators have their vision back. But what they see is not a handful of survivors. It's a nightmare. Over 50 drones, the entire remaining attack force of Lyutyi and Palianytsia models, emerge from the darkness, a wave of vengeance closing in from multiple vectors. The attack is a synchronized symphony of destruction. The first wave, consisting of 24 drones, executes the decapitation strike. They bypass the high-value tankers entirely. Their targets are the port's nervous system, the primary pumping stations, the main electrical substation, and the port's control center. A series of perfectly timed explosions erupts across the facility's core. The lights don't just flicker, they die. The pumps don't just stop, they shatter. Before the echoes of the first blast have faded, the second wave hits. This is the brute force follow-up. Another 24 drones plow into their targets with mathematical precision. One group slams into the Aframax Kusto and Kayun, their shape-charged warheads punching through the steel hulls like needles. Another group targets the articulated loading arms, turning the multi-million-dollar structures into twisted scrap. The final drones target the railway lines leading out of the port, ensuring nothing can be moved even if it survives the initial fire. It's over in less than 90 seconds. The Russian defense is completely overwhelmed and blind are reduced to firing randomly into the smoke-filled night. This was a pre-planned cascading failure. The strike on the electrical substation killed the port's automated fire suppression systems. The strike on the pumps ruptured the main pipelines, creating uncontrolled fuel spills. The strike on the tankers provided the ignition source. Ukraine didn't just light a match, they engineered a self-sustaining industrial inferno. The final scorecard is a study in tactical brilliance. The Russians successfully shot down 28 Beaver decoys. They won a meaningless battle against the bait. In doing so, they allowed over 50 heavy payload drones to slip past and annihilate their most valuable strategic economic asset on the Baltic Sea. The smoke had barely cleared over Primorsk when the financial shockwave hit the global markets. With 1 million barrels per day suddenly removed from the market, global oil prices jumped 2%. For Russia, the math was catastrophic. $41 million in daily oil revenue from this port gone. Over $100 million in immediate infrastructure and asset damage, with a total rebuild cost likely nearing $1 billion. This single operation did more to starve the Russian war machine than months of sanctions. It proved that Russia's most valuable economic assets, hundreds of kilometers from the front lines, were completely vulnerable. The multi-billion-dollar Panzer and Tor systems designed to stop NATO jets had been defeated by a swarm of what amounted to plywood compact diesel engines, consumer electronics, and a brilliant piece of software. The lesson from the Battle of Primorsk port is a masterclass in modern warfare. Russia built a taller, thicker wall, believing brute force and expensive hardware could guarantee security. Ukraine didn't try to knock the wall down. They learned to become water flowing underneath it through channels the defenders never even knew existed. In the 21st century,